Hello and welcome to Neuroshambles, the podcast that aims to shine a light into some of the murkier corners of what it's like to parent neurodivergent kids. I'm Mark Allen, and every episode I'm going to be swapping stories with my guests about some of the frankly ludicrous nonsense we have to deal with on a daily basis. So, if you're anything like me and you're feeling frazzled, overwhelmed and pretty much an outcast from polite society, join me. Hello and welcome to episode 34 of Neuroshambles. What an absolute treat it is to have you back again, Neuroshamblers. Thank you for your lovely comments since the last episode, including some in person. I've met some Neuroshamblers in the wild and it was genuinely thrilling. I did a talk at a conference in Bristol, the Together for Send conference organised by the Bristol Parent Carers Forum, which was a phenomenal event. I think it's happening again next year, so if you're in Bristol, it's definitely worth going to that. But I did my first ever public appearance. I mean, I've been out of the house before, but it was my first speaking appearance and I loved it. My talk was about rewriting the rule book for our neurodivergent kids. So if any of you are in the market for some of my nonsense in a live talk, feel free to reach me at hello@neuroshambles.com and maybe I'll pop along to your event as well. It'd be lovely. Or do it online or, just have a chat in person. Who knows? I'm not fussy. Anyway, we've got a fabulous episode lined up where I'm going to be talking to a new guest discussing a topic that I think is going to resonate particularly with a lot of you. It's one of those ones where it's a bit of an elephant in the room. We don't really talk about it as parents of neurodivergent kids. So hopefully this will expose the elephant and give us lots to think about. As well as that, we've also got your classics, the neurodiversity champions, tiny epic wins, and what the flip moments. So let's get started.
Meet the guest.
This week's guest continues the serendipitous trend of people who were mentioned in the neurodiversity champions section of Neuroshambles shortly before our paths crossed via a completely different route. So this goes back to episode 31 where Charlotte Mountford discussed this week's guest without knowing that I'd actually had an email from her that very day. So obviously, I jumped at the chance to get her on as a guest. So as well as being an award-winning occupational therapist with 25 years experience, she also hosts a podcast called The Untypical OT Talks, which I'm a big fan of. So I am delighted to be able to welcome aboard the wonderful Liz Evans. How are you doing, Liz?
I'm really good, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure. As we do with every guest that we get onto Neuroshambles, what we'll do is start off by understanding a little bit more about your setup and the neurodivergencies at play there. What are your children sporting by way of neurodivergencies?
We are neurodiverse in our family. So my eldest is neurotypical.
Okay.
And my youngest is diagnosed as autistic. He's also dyspraxic, has sensory processing differences. And experiences really, really high levels of anxiety.
Right, okay.
He was in mainstream school, academically, does very, very well academically, top of the class with stuff, learning at a very high level, but was falling apart when he came home in a big way.
Which is recognisable to so many people, I'm sure.
Yeah. Then lockdown came and we moved schools. I moved home. Lots of things happened and changed for us as a family.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he never really quite got back to school after lockdown. He went, but it wasn't ever quite the same.
Right.
I was never getting him in with regularity.
Mm-hmm.
And then his mental health just fell out the bottom. It was just awful, a really, really stressful time for all of us. And that presented in him not wanting to go to school. And we kept trying and we kept trying and we kept trying. And eventually we were quite lucky in the fact that we got some support from CAMS. I know other people have not got quite so good experiences with CAMS, but eventually CAMS and I had to say to him, you can't keep going. The risk levels were too high. It was too stressful. He was really poorly at that point. But then I had to rethink my whole career. I'm a single parent. I've got 2 kids, I've got a mortgage. And I was like, what do you mean he's got to be at home? What do I do now? Whilst we've been through COVID and lockdown, it had been great because I could do everything online. But as we came out of COVID and lockdown, parents understandably wanted OT back face to face.
Yeah,
and I couldn't do it. I
couldn't
offer it. So I had to pivot. And I've become the queen of pivoting.
You need to play netball.
Well, I used to.
There you go. Your skills in netball help you now.
Yeah. Yes.
Pivoting everywhere.
Yeah. So that's how the Untypical OT launched, was basically an online support. And I went down the route for parents because, and we'll get onto that a bit later, but because of what I experienced and what I went through.
And actually, there is a massive call for that as well, because, other people are struggling to get their kids out of the house and to stuff. Yeah. So, well, nice pivot, Liz. Thank you for introducing me to your setup. What we're going to do now is launch into this week's topic of the week. Because in episode 31, when Charlotte mentioned that this was something that you discuss, I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let's get you on to talk about it. So, I'm quite keen to delve into this topic of the week.
What's the topic of the week?
So this week's topic is one that many of us will no doubt be experiencing to various degrees, but I don't think it's something that's very often talked about enough, and that is the subject of parental burnout. Because so much time and energy is invested in advocating for our neuro-exceptional kids and making sure their various accommodations are being met at home and in the outside world, that it's really easy to lose sight of accommodating for our own needs. And speaking from my own experiences, I am perpetually placing myself at the bottom of the pecking order in my own neuroshambolic household. And that obviously is going to take a toll on me. And I'm keen to get to grips with this knotty topic, to learn a little bit more about what parental burnout is and maybe how we can tackle it. I'm just looking for some advice, to be honest, Liz.
Okay.
It's just,
just that small bit of advice.
Just therapy for me. Just solve it for me. So I guess, firstly, we're not talking about your common or garden persistent level of exhaustion that all of our listeners are feeling. That's undeniable. The level of constant overwhelm and exhaustion that we're feeling just getting our kids out of the house, or getting them down for breakfast, or getting them the right breakfast with the right spoon. It's like just so many micro battles that we have to fight every day is exhausting. But that's different to burnout, right? That's not to minimize the everyday exhaustion that we're all going through, but burnout is sort of much more serious than that. And I just wanted you to explain a little bit more about that and how that manifests itself.
Well, I think the difference is between exhaustion, you get to a point where you can rest. And if you do rest, it will alleviate some of those feelings. It will alleviate some of that feeling of being exhausted if you rest. Yeah. Whereas I think something like burnout, it almost feels like it doesn't matter how much rest you get, it's never, ever going to be enough. The only way I can describe it, and because I've been through it myself, is your bones are tired. It's like a tiredness I've never experienced. Yes. Okay. And that is the product of so many things that kind of get you to that stage. Absolutely. And I think when I talk about it with parents, I often talk about the fact that it's the demand outweighs our capacity over a sustained period of time. Yeah. So it's not just one thing here or one thing there. It's a constant build-up of stresses and strains and lack of control over what is happening in our lives. And I think for neurodivergent families or families with additional needs, we're often dealing with systems that we have no control over, environments that our kids don't flourish in. Yeah. We are dealing with people that don't understand, that we're having to constantly explain, constantly advocate, constantly fight to get what our kids need. We're in systems that seem uncaring, and at times, some of us as parents are literally trying to keep our children alive. Yeah. Things are that bad in those families. And to be met with systems that don't care. And, as a parent, what's the one thing? And I say it to my kids all the time and they get really bored. What's the one thing that my job is? And like, to keep us safe. I go with keep us alive. But keep us alive. Yeah. You might not be safe, but at least you're alive right now. Yeah. I'm doing my job. But no, it is. Yeah, absolutely. And we worry all the time. And, let's acknowledge firstly that parenting kids is hard.
no matter if they're neurotypical
Hugely.
or
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
neurodivergent. When you have kids for the first time, your world completely shifts on its axis. So instead of just looking out for yourself, what do I want for dinner? What am I going to do tonight? Everything turns inwards and you isolate yourself to a degree. You focus inwards, particularly in the early years. And obviously that is a level of mental load that as a parent, you've never been used to before. So there's that shock of that. But we're not just talking about that, right? Having neurodivergent kids is so much harder. I liken it to like playing a video game for your first time, but it's on the maximum level of difficulty.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's your first playthrough, right? You don't know what the fuck you're doing. You don't even know the controls, right? You're having to work it all out.
You're just randomly pressing all the buttons.
And all of the bosses are like maximum level, and you're just like, it's so much harder. And that mental load is persistent, I think. And as you say, that it's on so many different levels.
Yeah.
The increased caregiving demands is one.
It's huge.
Yeah.
I think any parent, whether they are neurodivergent themselves or additional needs themselves, or they come from a family, there are people out there that aren't in those families that still have the potential to burn out.
Oh, totally, yeah.
I think there is this very idealistic view of what a parent should be. You know, we shouldn't show emotion. We shouldn't get upset. We shouldn't get angry. We shouldn't do all these things. Basically, we shouldn't be human. We should just be a robot. And where that comes from really interests me. And I think some of it comes from our experience of our own parents. You know, sometimes we come out from our experience of our own parenting and think, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, that is very often the way, isn't it? I look at that and go, no, I'm going to do the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And I'm
going to be so much better.
Yeah.
I'm going to be so much better and get it all right.
So you're setting the bar so high for yourself. Yeah.
Hugely. And I think then as well, you come out with all this, there's, you know, the books around and the experts around about you should do it like this and the perfect way to parent. And, you know, you should do this when the baby's born and you should leave them to cry, don't leave them to cry. Have them here, don't have. There is so much information that I remember, even before I knew we were part of a neurodivergent family, being completely overwhelmed. And I remember saying to the midwife, just tell me what I need to do. And then she just went, well, I don't really know. And then I got given 5 different options. And then I thought, well, that's not helpful.
Yeah, just tell me, just make my mind up for God's sake. Yeah,
yes,
no, I know.
Do.
But, you know, actually the most honest and useful advice is like, no one knows. Just wing it.
Exactly that. And I think I have a saying that it's you do the best that you can with what you know at the time.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. And I think where that then changes for some people is that when we discover we are part of a neurodivergent family, is we are then constantly now on the learning curve. And all parents are learning as they go along because every day is different.
Yeah.
I've only ever parented a 5-year-old, and that particular 5-year-old, next year they'll be 6 and it'll be different again. So they're kind of going along on this trajectory, and we are kind of almost going straight up. Ours is like vertical.
Yeah, it's a very steep learning curve, yeah.
And we're on the internet looking for the answers because our kids don't fit a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And the parenting styles that we're told work don't.
Yeah, this is, funnily enough, the subject of the talk that I did recently. Thanks for leading on to that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but it's that whole thing about realizing that there's something different but not knowing what. And the user manuals that you're looking at going, well, if I do this and this, my child's going to do that. And you look at it and you go, well, I did that and that. And my child is now like climbing on the sofa and sticking his finger up at me. This is not what the manual says.
Yeah. And the tendency is then to go, well, the book says and the expert says it should be like this and it's not, so now it's my fault.
Yes.
I'm the bad parent.
And you get that from other people as well. You get the judgment from the other parents or family members.
And even just being out in the community. Don't even get me started on what happens in the community when you're out.
Don't go out into the community, Liz. That's the last thing we need. You've got your neurodivergent community and we're all online.
I know. That's where I should just stay. But I remember being out with the boys when they were young, and like it or not, there is, I think, a judgment against single parents, particularly single mums, and out with 2 kids. And I just need, I always felt there was this, you just need to be a bit tougher on them. The other one I used to get when he's kicking off in the middle of the supermarket is, Is he tired? I think,
No, but I am. Get out my fucking way, lady.
actually, no, we're having a full-scale meltdown because actually something's not right. And you coming in and actually going, oh, is he tired? Is really not helping me.
Yeah,
Can you just
yeah.
do one and leave me alone?
Yeah.
And that's really hard. People's other people's judgment and thoughts and, oh, have you thought about? Oh,
Yes.
No.
No, I haven't thought about turmeric as it happens, because that is absolute quackery. Get out of my face and take your spice with you.
Not what you need in the moment, is it?
Yeah, but I mean, that is something that, that is deeply frustrating, and it doesn't help the mental load, because you are then under the impression that everyone else has got it sorted, right? Oh, because you then look at their children who are sat there waiting while their mum goes and tries to parent someone else's child. It's like, I'm so good at this, I can parent your child as well. It's like, no, look, these are different species. Just back up. So if you ever had someone to say, just give them to me for the weekend, I'll sort them out. It's like, dude, I bet you crack first.
Yeah, there's part of me that thinks, oh, go on, try it.
Yeah, find some respite.
What you look like at the end. Burnout's one of those things I think that it can creep up on you, and that's what happened to me. So considering the job that I do and all the work that I've done, I've worked in adult mental health as well, and all the support I've given parents over the years, I didn't see it coming until it took my feet out from underneath me and everything fell apart.
At the time, because I'm really interested in your experience, because and I'm sure a lot of listeners are as well, because none of us are that far off. I genuinely think that. No. At what point did you realize that that's what it was? Because that must have probably been once it had already happened, right? You didn't think, all this is getting too much. And
no, didn't see it coming at all. And I knew what was happening. Everything. It was one of those kind of perfect storms. Everything happened. He wasn't at school. I was struggling with trying to get work. I was dealing with EHCPs and local authorities, and where was I going to put him? His mental health was really poor. I was trying to keep him safe, and then introduce the local authority and tribunal.
Oh shit! You had that to deal with as well. So then the law get involved, and it's like, this is a whole new thing I've got to learn and understand and afford.
Yeah,
Jesus,
absolutely.
Liz. Yeah,
and that's what I think. Then, well, I talk about it when I talk about burnout and my experiences. What happened was I ended up on the kitchen floor in floods of tears.
Would you remember the trigger?
No.
Well, it wasn't like a letter. You just opened it and went, that's
nothing.
It, I'm done.
I just stood in the middle of the kitchen one day. Nothing triggered it that I'm aware of.
I mean, obviously, many, many, many cumulative things triggered it. But there wasn't one final, like, that is the straw that broke the camel's back. It was just...
No, it was just one day. That was it. And I ended up on the kitchen floor crying. The kids were in the house, but not near me. I don't know where they were. It's really funny as well. I think there's bits of it I've blocked out.
Yeah.
I don't remember bits of it. And I think that can be quite common as well. You don't remember parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about it now and look back, I was probably on that kitchen floor for a couple of hours.
Wow.
Where I was just sat on the floor. There was no kind of magic answer that came into my head, or there was no shining light or no magic wand. You just get up because you have to.
But this is the thing, isn't it? You've got, what are the options?
Yeah, exactly that. I didn't have an option. And I think from there on in, I still didn't realise. I knew things were really bad and I wasn't good. But I still don't think I had kind of pinpointed what it was, as in I wasn't calling it burnout. I don't know what.
So you just went, I just had a moment. It just became a bit much. And then you just got up and carried on as normal.
Yeah.
And then you've got the kids going, where's my dinner?
Exactly that. And you just get back into your routine.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. And I think it was only after we had gone through and finished tribunal, so some of the stressor came off, that I thought, oh, I haven't been very well.
Right, okay. Yeah.
And I think you're in that kind of fright, flight, freeze kind of response, those stress responses, literally fighting for, at times, our lives to get us through things. That when that dropped away, when you're in those stress responses, it's all back in that old part of your brain.
Yeah.
And it's a safety mechanism. And your cognitive, that prefrontal cortex stuff goes offline. Your thinking, your reasoning, all that kind of stuff goes offline.
Yes. Okay.
So it's a bit. So when people say, I can't think properly, they've got that brain fog, and that's part of the burnout. That's why you're so much back in that old part of your brain, just trying to survive.
By instinct, basically parenting by instinct. Yeah.
But you can't think it through. And it wasn't until things started to ease that I thought, oh, I think I know what's happened.
Right. Okay.
And then there's been a period for me, I think, trying to work out, okay, and I am one of those people, what do I do about it?
Research, I guess, because that's where
and
I go.
Going back to my OT and going back to, balance and looking at my occupations and thinking about, why am I like this? What do I need in place? What strategies do I need? So my work brain kicked in eventually.
Okay, so you basically ended up using yourself as a case study. What would I recommend to myself in this situation?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. If I was the parent and I was coming across to you as a parent, what would I do? And that's basically what happened.
So the point that you'd sort of, the tribunal's over and you're like, oh, I think that's what it was. Was that where the research, because you must have known about burnout before then?
Well, do you know what? I did know about burnout before, but I think, like everybody else, I'd never made it specific to parenting. And when you look at the diagnostics, so the diagnostic manuals, there's the ICD-11, which I think is the most recent one, which is a diagnostic manual. It only acknowledges workplace burnout.
Right, okay.
It attaches burnout to workplace.
But work's like a fucking holiday.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, oh my God, I get to be a person, like in my own right. And, people listen to me and do what I ask them to do. And
that's the only bit it recognises. It doesn't recognise anything else. And part of
crazy.
Me thinks that's not. How can it just be in one place? You can't get burnout in one place. Surely,
no.
It's your life, and work is part of that. Being a parent is part of that. Lifing is part of that.
Yeah.
Burn out from anything.
What are the sort of diagnostic criteria for burnout?
I write them down because I never remember.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. I write them down. So they said it's characterised by energy depletion and exhaustion.
Right, check.
Parent, yeah.
Everyone's got that. Fine, check.
Mental distance, so distancing yourself from people.
As in zoning out when they're talking to you, or literally just like, I cannot deal with talking to another human.
Exactly that, yeah.
Tick.
And reduced efficacy.
I mean, yeah. Tick.
So I thought,
is that it? They're just three.
Those are the three.
Dude, I would imagine that every single one of my Neuroshamblers listeners has ticked those three boxes.
Yeah.
But I think there's got to be more to it than that. That seems a very low bar.
Yeah. And that's what it talks about. A syndrome that results from chronic workplace stress that has not been managed successfully.
That's a nonsense.
Yeah.
We eat that shit for breakfast.
Exactly. If you think you're burnt out at work, come into my household. And that's where that came from for me, was me thinking, and I'd heard people talk about autistic burnout. I'd heard people talk about ADHD burnout, but I hadn't heard people talk about parental burnout.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I was so interested when someone said that. I was like, ooh.
Yeah. And that's where that came from for me, was thinking it can't just be at work. And then I get my OT hat on, okay? So then I get all OT and think, okay, so occupational therapists, we consider occupations.
Yeah.
Occupation isn't just work. Occupation is it's anything that we do or participate in that we need to or is important to us. So if you want to get rid of the word work and think occupation, that could cover any part of your life.
Well, that's the thing, is that work, right, is by definition a set period of hours. Parenting has no set hours. It is full-time and full-on.
Yeah.
Right? No matter, what neurotype your children are.
Yeah.
How is that not more recognised?
Yeah.
So, so let's take out the word work and think of it as an occupation, and I am professionally parenting. Actually, I'm very often unprofessionally parenting, but yes, I am a parent by profession.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
moonlighting in my other job.
Yeah, but it's a role that we have. Like, you have a work role, you have a parent role, you have a relationship role, or you have all these different roles that make up your life. And I just couldn't understand how it could just sit just in work. So I'm sure I'm not the first person to have coined the term parental burnout, but I wasn't hearing it, I wasn't seeing it. So that's what I started to talk about. And I started to talk about that on my social media sites and got a huge response from other parents. And I thought,
Right, who were going through the same thing.
Yeah.
But, obviously not just the 3 things that characterise workplace burnout. But
Exactly. And I think the big thing for me is nobody's burnout is the same as anybody else's. And just like what causes me to burn out might not cause somebody else to burn out. It depends on, our skills, what we know at the time, what's happening in our environment. It depends on our neurotype, all sorts of stuff. We're more susceptible to burnout when we have got neurodivergence, sensory sensitivities, experiences, trauma backgrounds, all sorts of things will make us more susceptible to burnout.
So parental burnout, right? Because we've already accepted that workplace burnout is like your common or garden burnout, right? Yeah. Parental burnout is obviously something more than that.
Yeah. I think, burnout for people will look differently. My burnout was very much, I completely withdrew. I hardly spoke to people. I didn't want to talk about it because I felt like I felt ashamed that I couldn't do what I needed to do for my kids.
Yeah.
There was a lot of guilt involved that I needed to be more present with the kids. I needed to want to go and play in the park, and actually I didn't want to play in the park. I didn't want to talk about my son's special interest. I just wanted everyone to leave me alone. I was going through the bare minimum: feed you, water you, are you in semi-clean clothes? That was about where I could get to in that moment. And there was a lot of guilt that came with that, and
lot of course, which adds doesn't help at all, does it?
Huge, no, not helpful at all. So that happened for me. Brain fog, so just not. Sometimes I couldn't even get the words out. I mean, I had problems anyway, being dyslexic, finding the right words, but this was a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Executive functioning, just gone. Planning, organisation. I used to think I was quite organised, and then I had kids, and then realised I wasn't that organised. But it became even worse than that. Crying at absolutely everything. Anything said to me, I was always on the verge of tears, or about anything. It was just in the background, ready to kind of pop out. And then, like I said, is that kind of that real bone tired. You could have sent me to the Bahamas for 6 months, and that rest wouldn't have been enough.
Right. Okay.
Nothing kind of replenished that tiredness.
Yeah.
To allow me to feel better. It felt awful.
And this is the thing, though, that you're still getting these demands on you. You're still having to give care to your kids as best you can. And you still probably have that bar in your head of how you want to parent. And, you're having to entertain your kids sometimes and handle, you've got multiple kids and multiple neurotypes at play, and all of that. And that doesn't just go away.
No.
That's still happening. You're still worried about them, and you can't just park that.
No, and I think there's a lack of, like I spoke about earlier, there's this lack of control. And I think, if you get burnt out at work, you might get signed off. You can take some time out. You might go to your boss and see if you can make some adjustments to your work.
Man, can you imagine being signed off from parenting?
Exactly. Make some adjustments.
Go back to your kids, go, sorry guys, I'm not making dinner tonight. The doctor signed me.
Yeah.
Oh man, that would be sweet.
Yeah.
But obviously that's not going to happen unless they provide an alternative parental figure, which is not feasible.
No. And then ultimately, if your job is that bad, that burns you out that much, and you can't manage in that job, you have the choice to go and get another job. I can't go and get another set of kids. Well,
nor would you want to.
No.
Most of the time.
That kind of difference that I suppose that I'm trying to pull out is that kind of work burnout versus parental burnout.
Yeah. And there's grievance procedures and unions, and there's no parents' union, is there?
Not that I've come across.
Hey, let's start one.
Yeah.
I don't know what we'd achieve.
Yeah.
Dude, I got enough on my plate.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, absolutely. There's no grievance process. There's no HR to where you can go, I'm overworked. You just got to suck it up.
The biggest thing I think that came with that, it was the guilt for me, that I constantly giving myself a hard time that I couldn't do what the perfect parent should do. I needed to do more, even though I had given everything to the point I was now burnt out. they had nothing more left to give, that still wasn't enough in my mind. And not because, like you, I've got amazing family support, amazing, and they never made me feel like that. My kids never made me feel like that, but
Yeah.
I did feel like
So
that.
how old were your kids when you kind of hit burnout?
So they would have been 11 and 12.
Okay, so they would have sort of been aware that you were being different, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
Did they sort of raise that with you? Or did they just
I
like,
think,
Mummy doesn't give a shit, we're allowed to game all day. This is amazing.
I think
Sorry, I'm being glib. Forgive me.
I think for them, actually, what happened was it made them want to be with me more. And it's like
Okay, that's interesting.
you can get touched out by your kids. That's like I don't want to be touched anymore. I don't want to be spoken to. And actually, I think the more and more I kind of withdrew, the more and more they felt they needed to be with me, which made it really difficult. And again, I suppose that being in a solo parent household, there wasn't another parent that could go, I'm around.
Yeah.
I can be with you.
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked wobbly to them, I should think that was quite scary for them.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
because you are a place of safety,
Yes.
for the neurodivergent in a world that is not safe out there.
Yeah.
In here, you're that pillar
Absolutely.
of strength, and
Yeah.
that's
And
been compromised.
that is really hard. And we did used to, I think as I came out of burnout, we used to have conversations about me crying. Because I would often be like, I can't cry in front of the kids, and they're not stupid. Kids really aren't stupid.
No.
And they spot it. Mummy, have you been crying? No. What's wrong with your eyes? Nothing. Hay fever. And they don't believe you.
So at some point, did you kind of share that with them?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to go back to an episode I had with Jess Kane.
Oh yeah.
About siblings, and that was a real eye opener for me. That episode where Jess just went, "Do you advocate for yourself? Do you advocate for your own needs with your kids?" And I was like, "No.
Yeah.
Why would I?" And then she basically said it's really important to be able to do that, to say, you know what, this is too much for me. Here's what I need.
Yeah.
And I guess, and it shouldn't take reaching burnout to get to that stage. But at that level, were you, when you were there, were you able to then go, I just need this?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting conversation to have with your kids, because it's not anything that my parents did with us.
No.
Because there's a different generation,
Yeah.
right? And what I kind of learned from Jess and the conversation I had with Jess was that actually it's important to model to your kids advocate for themselves. By you saying this is what I need, they go, oh, you can do that, and that's what you do, and that's how you do it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to sort of tease a positive out of what was undoubtedly a horrendous situation. But did you find that your relationship with them and your ability to advocate for yourself then improved?
Absolutely. I would say now we're a team, and I'm still the parent, but I think what they have seen from me, and I try to show them, is that I'm a real person. So I get upset by things, but I recover. And that's the important bit, is that I know I get upset, and I will always get upset about something. And they laugh at me because I'm, perimenopause, and I'll cry at EastEnders, and they just look at me and like, you need something? Or is it just like a TV? And I don't worry about it, it's just EastEnders. But they are very aware, and I think that's brought us together as a team.
Yeah, okay.
That they are still safe with me. I'm still the parent. I still do the kind of protective bit, and I look after them. I'm not expecting them to parent me, because I think people can confuse that. I'm not looking for them to support me and be my carer, but I am showing them that it's real. And when you can get upset by things, you can get stressed by things, but I tell them what it is, because when you don't tell kids what it is, they will make up something themselves. Not a lie, but they will just create a reason why you feel like that. And often kids will make it about themselves.
Yes, exactly. And they'll catastrophize and think that something, certainly Otto has got a very, very strong trait of doing that.
Yeah.
It was interesting when you said essentially that you model bouncing back.
Yeah.
You model the fact that you can be low and you can be in a really rough place, but you can come back from it. And it's just understanding what you need and giving yourself that time. Yeah. And was it just time that, what's the recovery process from this?
I feel, and I talk about it, I'm quite open about it, is that burnout's always in the background for me. I think what I know now is I'm not frightened of burnout anymore. That's
Okay.
changed for me. It doesn't scare me anymore like it used to, or it did. And when I was in it, I was quite scared by it. It doesn't scare me anymore. I think I know what my stresses are. I know what's pushing me towards burnout and what will probably push me towards it. And I can use my pivot.
Nice
Yeah.
work. So do you sort of sense some sort of telltale signs that, oh, this is getting
Yeah.
too much?
Yeah. So I know there's a kind of collective signs that let me know that's where I'm going. Now, sometimes, even with what I do, I still will struggle to to pinpoint that myself. And what I talk about when I work with parents, and I have had to do it for myself, is creating those kind of safe circles. So I've got safe circles that are people that I trust and that who know me and aren't going to be, oh, you just need to, because that'll send me off in the
Oh,
opposite
yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I need a little nudge to say, all
Oh,
right.
so they're looking out for you and they're going,
Yeah.
oh, I've noticed
Yeah.
that you know.
Yeah. And they might just give me a little bit of a nudge, and then I go, oh yeah, okay. And now I know what I've got to put in. I know what I've got to do. And even this weekend, I put out an email to my email list that went out today. Last week was a really difficult week. It was really difficult. There was lots going on. And I got towards the end of the week and my partner just said to me, you all right? And I went, yes, fine.
Yeah.
He was like, are you? And I went, no. And then was able to kind of take that step back and to take that pause. And it's not always easy to stop. We can't always stop because of what's going on in our lives, but you can take a pause. Wherever you are and whatever's happening, even if it's just for 30 seconds, you can take a pause. And I think that what happened last week, I took that pause and thought, something's got to shift this weekend or I'm heading back down that route again.
Right. Okay. So even just being aware of it is
Absolutely.
now enough for you to check in and just go, okay. Yeah, something has to change.
Yeah. And then knowing what works for you. And I talk about, it's your burnout your way. You've got to find a way. You've got to find the ways that work for you and your nervous system and your life and your environment and your kids and your house and all that kind of stuff, and what you've got accessible to you and what demands you've got on you, because it will differ between people.
So when you were sort of emerging from burnout, it's sort of removing some of the judgment of yourself and your own parenting to go, do you know what? We can have chicken nuggets 2 nights in a row.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. This weekend, we did nothing that I had to cook and prepare. It just went in an oven. And did I feel bad about it? No, I didn't.
Yeah, and it's just, I guess, just giving yourself those little breathers in advance.
Yes.
Before it gets to, sobbing on the kitchen floor levels.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's being aware. What does it look like? What are my signs? And what do I know works for me? Easy as that.
This is all resonating with me quite heavily at the moment because, it's a lot. There's a lot going on at the moment, and it is just constant. And weirdly, this podcast is my respite.
Yeah.
That's insane, isn't it? There's so much work to do, but it just talking to other people and
that's a big thing, I think, is finding other people that get it. And that's a bit around those safe circles, is being able to find other people that you can talk about it, and they don't try and fix you. They don't come with the, oh, you just need to. They don't come with the, oh, my friend's cousin does this with their kids. Nothing like that. They just go, yeah, I see ya.
Yeah.
I hear ya.
Get off the socials. Stop looking at other people having a lovely family day out at a vintage car museum or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think there's a really lovely video by Brené Brown.
Okay.
And she talks about empathy. And it's a brilliant little video. If you ever get to go and see it, go watch it.
Send me the link to it and I'll put it in the show notes so everyone else can see it.
And it's about empathy. And it's someone down in a hole having a really hard time. And then there's someone kind of from the top of the hole shouting, going, oh, you just need to, or whatever, but at least, and all this kind of. And then there's another person that gets down in the hole with them and goes, I know what it feels like.
Yeah.
I'm here with you. And that's what you need.
That's what I sometimes need someone sitting in the hole with me, not just going, I know what it's like to be in a hole, but also turning to me and going, this is pretty shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is hard work, isn't it? Yeah. And it's like, okay, it's not just me then, sweet. No. And then we can move forward. But it is, I know, like I'm not equating what I'm going through to burnout but I do need to be better at reading the signs of when it's becoming too much. And I think I recognise a lot of that. Certainly workplace burnout. That's like base level when I wake up in the morning. But in terms of parental burnout, there are definitely telltale signs that I go through, and I'm sure Tam goes through as well. And I'm sure many of our listeners do. So I guess the point is just finding that space and being aware of it, and not trying to be the super parent that is going to do everything all in one go.
And I think there's something as well that happens as a parent, whether I think most possibly it happens more so when we've maybe got neurodivergent kids or additional need kids, is that I felt I lost a sense of who I was. And I remember being really upset once. Somebody said to me, "What do you like doing?" And I thought, I don't know.
Sleeping.
Yeah. A quiet house.
Yeah.
But I'd lost all the things that brought me joy, the things that I enjoyed doing. They had gone because my life had been totally taken over by systems and telephone calls and emails and trying to keep people safe and appointments and having to go down to school at a moment's notice, or not being able to get him out of the car, and I had lost all the things that I enjoyed. It's funny that we talked about netball. I took netball back up again.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going out on a motorbike, that kind of thing. Even just going to the sea. I know for me, the sea is my place where I just go, oh,
nice.
Can I get to the sea? Can I get there? How often can I get there? But it's getting a sense of you back again that I think lots of parents lose that.
Yes. And that is, a huge part of that depends on if you can get an element of respite, which, so this is a thing that I thought about discussing in this episode. And I started writing down some notes on respite, and then I kept writing notes on respite, and then I wrote some more notes on respite. I was like, this is an entirely separate episode in its own right. So I will be doing an episode about respite. So we're not going to go too far into that here, but it's not easy for parents of neurodivergent kids to get that respite. You're not going to get many people offering to take your neurodivergent kids while you go and just, go to the sea or whatever it is that is going to just get you back online. And that's a really difficult part of parenting neurodivergent kids.
Incredibly hard. Yeah, it's not like, leaving your kids to go away. I want to go away with my partner, or we want to go away. And we've just got to that point that I've been able to do that. But I also know there is a fallout from that. So even with all the prep and going with, family members that they're very, very comfortable, that they love, just me not being there is so stressful that when I come back, I know there will be a fallout.
Yes.
But I still prioritise me going.
But that's important though, because if you're not at your, not even at your best, if you're not at your most adequate, at the core level, there's going to be fallout another way, isn't there?
Absolutely.
But that's going to be on you. And it's about advocating for yourself and doing that.
And ultimately, if, they talk about, if you go down, the ship goes down. It does. If we go down as parents, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it is how do I look after myself in this? And like you said earlier, on the list of priorities, we are often at the bottom. And not only do we place ourselves at the bottom, I also think we are placed at the bottom. When we come across other professionals or systems or anything like that, how often, and this was a big thing for me when we were going through what we went through and the support that my son needed, nobody asked me if I was okay.
Yeah. That's definitely something that I've noticed as well. Like, how are the kids? How's Jay? How's Otto doing at school? And just other people checking in. Someone did that to me today, actually. One of the few friends that I have of the parents at school just put his hand on my shoulder and went, "How you doing?" It's like, it's not the time or the place. Let's go for a beer at some point, or several. But just checking in was like, okay, good. I can't unload it all now, but it felt all right that there was someone that does that, because it's not something that people do. I think other parents of neurodivergent kids do it.
I think we are pretty good at checking in on each other. It's little things like that, isn't it? And I think, I talk about that again on some of my social media stuff. Is sometimes it's just the tiny things that someone does, and it can be they've made you a cup of tea, or they've sent you a text going, "How you doing?" Or I've had a friend turn up with made dinner. They turned up
Whoa,
with dinner
nice.
on my doorstep. I could have loved them forever. I didn't have to cook dinner for the night, and they didn't stay. They just handed me the dinner and went, "Oh, I thought that you might like that," and that was it.
Yeah, that's lovely.
And it's little moments like that. And I think so sometimes people don't know what to do with us when we're feeling like that because they can't help.
Well, this is the thing that I get, and it really, and I'm slapping my knees because I'm getting animated, right? One of the most frustrating things, the platitudes that I hear is, I wish we could do something to help. Right? I get that a lot. And that, I cannot do anything with that because you are simultaneously saying, I acknowledge that you need help.
Yeah.
I acknowledge you're going through a rough time, but I'm also ruling out any possibility of me helping you. I wish there was something that we could do to help. Like, I mean, you could.
Yeah.
You know, I'd actually prefer just like, you know, how are you? How are things? Because then I could at least, but it's almost shutting down that conversation.
Yeah. Where'd you go with that?
You know, if they were to turn around and go, what can we do to help?
Yeah.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
You know, even just to, you know, just come around for a cup of tea or something. I need to see other people.
Yeah.
I need to speak to other humans.
Yes.
Just come around for a cup of tea. Because there are other platitudes I've got as well. You're doing so well. Have you heard that one?
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, really? Am I? You have no idea. Because again, that's acknowledging, God, it's fucking hard for you.
Yeah.
And again, you're doing so well is just standing on the sidelines, isn't it?
See, I find that one really condescending, and I don't think they often mean it in a condescending way.
No.
Yeah,
None of this is meant in a malicious
way.
Oh,
you're doing so well. I just think, shut up.
Yeah, really. Yeah, exactly. Well, where's my medal?
Yes.
The other one that gets me, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners have had this as well, is someone that says, I could never do what you have to do.
Like you have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, do you know what? I can't do it either sometimes, but I fucking have to.
Yeah.
You know, this is...
I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, that's the other one. I don't know how you do it. Well, what are the options?
Yeah.
What
Please
are the
tell
choices?
me, because I don't know what they are.
You could learn how to do it. Yeah. Come in.
Yeah, that's the one that drives me nuts. Is that
help me out here.
I don't know how you do it because I just think you don't have a choice as a parent. You just have to get on with it and do it. What do I do other than I have to do it?
And where do you go from there? Where do you go from that statement? Well, you know, with a lot of coffee and very little sleep.
Yes.
That's basically it. And an absolutely legendary level of patience.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I didn't know I possessed until this entire journey kicked off.
Yeah.
And that very patience is saving me from slapping you right now. So let's all be thankful.
Well, I've had the ones as well when people go, oh, you know, when the kids are just like gaming and stuff, why don't you go for a quick lie down? I think, do you know how much I've got to do?
Yeah, that's it. Oh, right, that's it. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah, when they're quiet, I'm running around. I'm out here doing that, doing the garden, putting the washing on. What's for dinner?
When they don't need me, the house needs me.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's constant.
Yeah.
I think parents of neurotypicals have this idea that, yes, raising neurodivergent kids is hard, obviously, but then raising kids is hard. So how much harder could it be? You know, and they probably in their own mind go, well, it might be like 25% harder or something like that. It's like, you have no idea because it's not like, you're not just adding a bit of difficulty. It's cumulative, right? It's multiplied. You're not adding on an extra like 10 mental load points for this and adding on an extra 4 mental load points for that. You're multiplying it every single time until it just becomes this overwhelming thing that you're just completely bogged down by. So that's when those platitudes, take a break, go away for a weekend, all of that is just completely missing the point. And as you were saying, like even that, when you're in burnout, even that's not enough. Even that's not going to get you out of it.
No.
You know, I listened to the episode on your podcast, which I will put a link to in the show notes. But the episode you did with Heidi Maver.
Oh, yeah.
Friend of the podcast, Heidi. She was talking about when Theo had emerged from burnout. That's when she hit burnout.
Yeah.
And similar to you, right? The tribunal was done. And then you stop and you go, oh shit.
Yeah. And then it
can't-
hits you like a 10-ton truck.
Yeah. And so Heidi said that she was like in bed for like at least a month.
Yeah,
And literally bedbound, not able to move.
Yeah.
Which kind of echoes what you were saying about just being tired to your very bones.
Yeah. It's an exhaustion. I can't explain it, the exhaustion.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be listening to this going, that's me. My bones are tired as well. And yes, we're all, like, as I said at the start, I think that all neurodivergent parents feel this to some degree.
Yeah.
Like we are all
Yeah.
feeling this level of exhaustion because of the mental load and the fact that we've got so many demands placed on us by children, and the fact that we have to do so much admin and meetings and trying to hold down a job, and maybe you're kind of looking after elderly parents and you might have financial worries. These are all cumulative things that we have to deal with, and none of it's going away. Right? Because, you know, the one thing that we're not going to do is give up the fight for advocating for our kids.
Nope.
So are there any sort of key pointers that you could give to people who find themselves slipping into the quicksand of parental burnout?
One is finding that group of people that get it. So it is about finding a backup team, support team, whatever you want to call it. People that you can talk to and they go, yeah, I get it. I get that.
Yeah. And very often that's online.
Yes, very often it is. Especially because we never get out anywhere. Yeah.
Well, because also, how are you going to find them?
Yeah.
You're not just going to be walking around a supermarket going, well, that person's kid's kicking off. That's one of mine.
Yeah. yeah.
Go and start up a conversation while their child's having a meltdown.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. No one needs that. But there are pretty much always local Facebook groups or, you know, I don't know where else. That's where I found mine. I was like, right, these are my people.
Yeah. And a bit like, you know, you do, you know, Mark, with your podcast as well, it's through the podcast. So, you know, I hear lots of people talking on the podcasts where I think, oh, I get that. I understand that bit. That kind of resonates for me. But also, I think it's listening to other people talk and it's finding the things that work for you. And sometimes another parent has just got that golden nugget that you go,
yeah.
Ooh.
I hadn't thought of that.
I hadn't thought about that. And I'm going to go and try it. And it's not someone going to you, oh, do you know what? You're in burnout. Here's a list. Go and do all these things.
I don't want more homework, guys.
No.
Just give me the little nugget I need.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's having to go out and try and find that. And there is no magic answer for that. And that's a hard thing to hear when you're in burnout, is that what we want is someone to go, if you just go and do this, then everything will be okay. And I think we flirt on the edges of burnout. You know, even if you haven't hit burnout, I would say probably most neurodivergent families, there's a parent in there that's flirting around the edge of burnout somewhere.
Absolutely.
How far they go down that route depends on protective factors, how well they recognize it in themselves. So I think, you know, it is about knowing it and knowing what your burnout looks like. What does it look like? How does it pop up for you? How does it show for you? Bringing other people in to support if you can, if you've got that.
And sharing it, I guess, and letting people know that's what's going on. Because I think, you know, you said, you know, very often in a relationship, one of the parents might be experiencing burnout. And we all know which parent that is. It's usually the mums, isn't it? Let's be honest, you know, that very often the bulk of this mental load.
I wonder whether dads burn out in different ways.
I mean,
I've got a bit of thinking around that one.
Oh, okay.
Can I go for it?
Yeah. Go with me on that.
So I think when you look online, you know, I think I've got a group that I run for parents. I would say I think I've got about 350 people in there. I think there's 2 men.
Yeah.
I'm making a sweeping generalisation here, but women tend to go and will look for support socially. That's where they go. They'll go and look online. They'll find a group of mums that they kind of get on with. They'll go out and socialise. And they will talk about, 9 times out of 10, they will talk about how things are difficult. If you get them in the right environment with the right kind of people, they will have big in-depth conversations about how tricky things are, how difficult things are. My experience of men, when I've come across them, is different. Is often they will go out and they will seek support, but in a very different way.
Okay.
So they will go out often, and it's quite practical what they'll do. So they'll go and do something together, like they might go to the pub together, or they might go and
build a shed.
Yeah, and I'll come on to it a bit later, actually, because one of the things we talk about champions later on.
Okay, yeah.
It's just around kind of men and how they look for support. And often, I don't know whether men feel they can't say they're having a hard time because they're not the ones that are picking up the majority of the load. They feel they can't say, I'm struggling, I'm finding this hard.
Yeah.
Because I shouldn't, or I'm not doing as much.
Well, let me be one of those dads to say, fucking hell, it's hard.
Yeah.
I'm finding it really hard. There are, as a dad of neurodivergent kids, there are groups that I've kind of seen, there's a local group to me, which is dad meetups and things like that. So it is out there and it is available. But I do think that the mental load of looking after neurodivergent children very often falls squarely on the mum.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I don't know if there's any kind of gender stereotypes around being the caregiver more than the breadwinner. I don't know why that is, but I think the dads need to step up more. There, I said it. Like, because it's too often, too many people that I talk to, they're doing the physical stuff, and this, and I'm including my own, my own former relationship with Tam. That Tam was doing a lot of the admin, and we'd obviously agreed that I was, because I was earning more, then I'd do that, and Tam would be part-time and do all of the admin. But that's a lot of mental load that I'm not taking on. I'm fucking off to work and having a lovely time talking to people and, being a human in the real world. And it's very often that the mental cost of supporting and advocating for neurodivergent kids is placed on the women. And I think that it needs to happen more, that the dads will need to check in and need to say, what can I do? What can I take? I mean, Tam and I have redressed the balance a little bit more now, and Tam going, right, you're doing more of the admin. It's like, okay, fine. And like, oh, Jesus, this is a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. And when they do that, can they step away from it and let you do it? Because I think there's some of me that just thinks, I don't want them to do it. I'm going to do it because I can do it properly. Well,
the thing is, and it might not appear this way from this podcast, but I am largely competent as a as a human. I'm quite good at admin, and we've always been so. Yeah, I think Tam does trust me and knows that I can actually do that. But I think dads, even if they're not, because they are still stepping up, they are working and probably working harder, because there's definitely the mental load of going, if I don't keep my job, if I don't keep bringing in money, if I don't get a better job, this all falls down.
And that's a lot of pressure.
That's a lot of pressure. And that's probably why they don't share it. But I don't think they're taking on as much of the burden or an equal share of the burden of advocating for their neurodivergent kids. And I look at the listenership of this podcast, because you get to see the gender breakdown. It's really interesting, right? It is like staggeringly skewed towards women listening to this. Like, and look at the guests that I get on, all of my wonderful guests. Like, I'd love to get more dads on, so it is definitely a thing that it's a balance that I think needs to be redressed. I don't know how to do it other than do what I can, like in my own family. But you're saying sort of share that mental load with someone else. And I wonder how many people are in a relationship where the dad doesn't take that on. It's like, actually, I'm dealing with this shit at work. I'm really stressed at work. That's your job and this is my job. And actually, they're not comparable. The mental load of having to fight for accommodations for your neurodivergent kids, I think, is next level. Yeah. Because it's so laced with worry and fear and frustration and anger a lot of the time that your day job doesn't even come close to.
Yeah. Yeah. And the day job's preferable.
It really is.
It's a nice place to be.
So the dad's got workplace burnout. The mum's got parental burnout. I know which one I would take.
Yeah.
So step up, dads. Roll your sleeves up and get stuck in.
I'm glad you said it.
It's not all rubbish.
Okay, so let's look at the positives now of parental burnout. Now, unsurprisingly, there are very few positives out of this. I guess we touched on one a little bit earlier, actually, which is that if you get to that point that you have to start advocating for your own needs, and people see that because they're seeing you at rock bottom, that can bring you closer as a family unit, as you experienced. And also that you showed that you can bounce back.
Yeah.
And so you're modeling that. So there's a positive from emerging from burnout.
Yes.
And once again, I guess a positive is just the beacon of light of the neurodivergent community in all of this, as you've alluded to, as I allude to in every single podcast.
Yeah.
These are our neighbours, right? They've got our back.
Exactly
And being able to share your experience with other people who get it is so valuable. You know that they've been in your shoes. They're not going to be giving you those platitudes.
No, I don't get judged by them.
Oh, that's such a big thing, isn't it? And they don't try to minimise what you're going through.
And I think as well, they're not uncomfortable with you saying, I'm not okay. We're very British in the fact that when we go, how are you? Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I find with the neurodivergent community, they can go to me, how are you? And I can go, I'm really awful. And they go, oh, okay. But they're not frightened by that.
Having someone that I can be just, this is a rough time right now.
Yeah.
And knowing that they're not going to try and fix it.
Yeah.
They're just going to sit in the trenches with me for a little bit. Because they're going through their own shit. And
there's a little bit of that dark humour in there as well that comes out that I love.
Yes.
Which sometimes is just what you need. Sometimes, in some of the toughest jobs that I've done, the humour that some people would probably go, that's a bit close.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's
actually is what gets you through it, that we can laugh.
That's the reason that I thought Neuroshambles would work. Is because I've met so many people who can laugh at this situation in amongst, the very dark times. But I know that there's a kernel of humour amongst all of us that we want to share. And so I was hoping that people would do that. And I'm very grateful that people do. And people want to listen to this nonsense. It's not for everyone.
Neurodiversity champions.
This is the Neurodiversity Champions section now. This is where I give you the opportunity to give a shout out to anybody in the neurosphere who are doing particularly wonderful things in the field of neurodivergency, whether it's a person or an organisation. Have you got anyone that you want to mention?
Loads. I had trouble with this one because I was having to bring it right down.
It's like the Oscars.
Well, it is. I think and that's what I think is what's so lovely at the moment is there's like an explosion of stuff out there at the moment of people creating spaces that are neurodivergent, friendly, welcoming, affirming. That is so lovely to see. But I think one that I wanted to mention was a group run by a guy called Paul Braxton, and it's called Super Good Bikers.
Right, okay, nice.
And they are a group of bikers that ride for autism and neurodivergence, and they create rides popping up around the country where they go out and raise money for people, places like the National Autistic Society.
Right, okay.
And they raise money for there to kind of support the kids. He's also at the moment raising money to buy a sidecar for the motorbike so that they can go around and offer young people that are autistic to be able to go out on the bike in the sidecar.
Oh man, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, so he's doing that. But also what he does is a lot of work around working with and supporting dads. I think that's how it started, but us kind of mums have got in there as well, the ones that possibly the biker mums have got in there too. But I think for him it was set up for what he talked about. He came onto my podcast and did a chat and talked about why he set it up and that, he went out and rides and bikes because that's how he copes with what's been happening at home for him.
Right, that's his release, right?
That's his release.
Okay.
And so he set these rides up and he was saying that, the dads would come and they would come for the bike ride and that would be about it. But what's starting to happen now is that the dads will come, they go for a bike ride and then afterwards there's a conversation and they start to talk about what it's like to parent a neurodivergent child. And he gave an example, of dad turning up and going, can I say something? I get really embarrassed when I have to go to the shops and my son, who's 20 odd, wants to take Peppa Pig. and Paul going, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
That is embarrassing. I get that, but it's what they need. But then being able to have those really open conversations. So he does a great job. And I go to, there's one that he runs down near me I'm down in Surrey, and we go to one that he puts on every year. And he works really hard with it's all his merchandise and arranging these bike rides. And I know he's got a bike ride going up at the Yonderman Cafe, and he's got over 100 people booked on as
Oh,
bikers
wow.
going.
Okay.
So he's doing a great job. So yes, Super Good Bikers for Autism would be my shout out.
Okay, I'll put a link to that in the show notes, and we'll see if there's a super good bike ride near you, right?
Yes.
Awesome. I wanted to give a shout out because I get quite a few emails to the Neuroshambles email account from people trying to plug stuff or trying to plug a book. But someone emailed me about a film that is coming out that I was like, oh, this sounds good.
Yeah.
And this is from Dartmouth Films. And there is a film that is going to be released pretty much around the time that this podcast is going to be released on the 28th of March in UK cinemas. There's a film called The Stimming Pool. Nice. I already love the title. And it's an experimental feature film co-created by a bunch of autistic artists, so autistic directors basically doing short films shot from their perspective of their view on the world. But I was really interested that it's a purely neurodivergent bunch of directors, and it's got a huge release. It was sold out at the BFI in last year, and it's now going to be screening across the UK from the 28th of March. So there is a website. It is thestimmingpool.com, and there's loads and loads of local screenings, and quite reasonably there are autistic friendly screenings as well.
Wow.
God, I love an autistic friendly screening.
Well, do you know what, Mark? I have got a son, my youngest, who's autistic, is the biggest film buff you will find.
There you go.
So watch his films, and he writes reviews. He loves Mark Commode and listens to his podcast.
Okay.
And he writes in a very similar way.
Nice.
And he is fanatical he knows everything there is, all the directors, everything. He would love to know about that. He wants to go off to be a film director. That's where he's heading.
Well, hopefully this will be the spark that kicks it off.
Tiny epic wins.
So, tiny epic wins now. These are moments that in the neurotypical world would not be considered any big deal, but in our world they are major epic wins. Have you got any tiny epic wins for us, Liz?
Oh, I have.
Oh,
I have. So this was about my son, and we have a bit of a problem in our house with food. I've got boys, yeah, so they just eat everything.
Okay.
One in particular, my older one, is just like locust, will eat everything. So my son had come down, my youngest, and had said, there's biscuits missing. And this time, it wasn't my oldest son. It was me. I had eaten the biscuits.
Right.
So I said to him, I'm really sorry, I ate the biscuits. And he was really cross with me, like really cross. He was telling me off. It's really out of order. He was really cross with me. And I kept saying to him, I've said I'm sorry. I've said I'm sorry to you. Why do you keep going on about this? You're being out of order now. I've taken the biscuits. I said I was sorry. Can I get over it? And he just turned around to me and he went, I'm allowed to be angry. You've told me I'm allowed to be angry. I'm angry. I went,
nice.
Fair enough.
Yeah, okay.
They repeat stuff back to you that obviously he'd done something to me at some point, and I'd gone to him, I'm really cross, I'm allowed to be angry. But it's when they flip it back at you.
But that's him advocating for himself, right? Wonderful. That sounds great. I've got a tiny epic win, which just completely took me aback. We were having dinner, and Otto, who is notoriously clumsy, knocked over a glass of water. You know when they knock over a glass of water and it spills across the whole length of the table, and you're like, oh my God. And I was sort of getting someone else's dinner ready while he did it. And so I didn't say anything. And he, without being prompted, got up, got a towel, and went to himself, said, I suppose I should clean this up now. And he mopped up the water. Without being prompted. This has never happened, Liz. He's never done this. He's never even shown any willingness to do this. I'd already assumed that I was going to have to do it, because if I ask him to do it normally, he gets anxious about it. Yeah. Like he gets, it's a demand, and that, I don't know if he's demand avoidant, but either way, it's not well received. Mm-hmm. So just watching him do it, I didn't say anything. I didn't interrupt. I was just like, what the what on earth is going on? And he mopped it up. He didn't do a great job, I'll be honest. He left quite a few bits, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
Right? I obviously didn't correct him. I just went, I didn't praise him either because he doesn't like praise.
Yeah.
But I've stored it up in my head.
You're
so
like,
I know if he does it again, I will suggest it. And if he says no, I'll be like, no, but you did it before and you did a fabulous job. I know you've got it in you. Yeah, that's a massive win for me that he actually did that on his own.
What the flip?
So, what the flip moments now? These are the moments that I think a lot of parents of neurodivergent kids experience when their child will say or do something that will completely flabbergast them and leave them unsure of quite how to respond. Do you have any what the flip moments for us, Liz?
I do.
Good.
So, my youngest is hypermobile, probably Ehlers-Danlos. So I'm diagnosed as Ehlers-Danlos. So he has this ability to get himself into positions that you look at and think, how? Why? And is that comfortable? And I think he still catches me with it. The things like, I'll find him, we have been in OT, I've got like big yoga balls in the house.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll often find that most kids will sit on them and bounce on them, or they kind of run over the top. You'll find him kind of upside down over it backwards with an iPad, watching a movie upside down in double speed.
It's like,
is that
you do.
Yeah. And what happens now is we kind of just go, and just walk past him, or I'll find him kind of halfway up a stairs in a really weird position, kind of really wedged into the stairs whilst listening to a piece of music and watching something on a screen, and we just step over him now and just kind of go.
So funny. Yeah. Sometimes you walk past people's houses and you might look in the window and just a little look at what they're doing in their houses. There must be people walking past your house like, what the hell is going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. I just, if there's a weird position that he can get himself into, he will. And often people will go, is that all right? And I'm like, yeah, he's fine.
He'll let you know if it's not.
Yeah, he's comfy. And he's concentrating. And his favourite place to sit is on the stairs.
It's fine. Just let it slide. It's fine.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of what the flip moments. This is from India, who is increasingly unmasking and revealing her fabulous brain. And I took India to the farm recently. India loves animals, and I wanted to spend a little bit of one-on-one time with her. So I was like, right, let's get at the farm. We went to the farm and we had a lovely time. So we petted some goats and she fed some pigs, and it was great. And we were going to go to the cafe for some food. And I went, oh, you're supposed to wash your hands after petting the animals. And I suspect that India is demand avoidant. And if I needed evidence, what she said after that is all the proof I need. I said, you're supposed to wash your hands after petting the animals. And she said, who said there's a rule about not breaking the rules? I was like, I had to stop and think about that for a bit. That is deep for a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my God, that's really, yeah, I guess. How'd
you respond to that one?
Well, that's it. Well, I can't buy you a hot chocolate unless you wash your hands. So, they're just the rules, and I follow them. But yeah, there's no response to that, is there? No. I just sort of shrugged it off and hoped that she would comply.
Did she?
She did, actually. Yeah, but that's only because the water was warm and she had cold hands. So, you got to go in a different angle, right?
For doing it. Yeah. I love it when they come up with stuff like that.
I know. I've never heard that before.
No.
That's staggering. There's one more from India that I'm going to bust out as well.
Go on.
She'd done a bunch of drawings and she wasn't happy with them. So she just screwed them up and left them on the table. So I asked her to put them in the bin, and she just ignored me and walked off. Which, now I've got to do something, right? I can't lose this little battle. So for some reason, the place I went to was I pretended to be a character called the Trash Elf.
Okay.
who needed help to feed the bin. So I put on this absurd accent and basically became the Trash Elf that needed help. And India did everything that I asked. Like, the Trash Elf was in charge. She did the
Genius.
paper, put the paper in the bin. I was like, Jesus, what else can I get the trash
Yeah.
elf to do? The trash elf got her to load the dishwasher, to push all the chairs under the table, to tidy the crocs away. The trash elf was in charge for one moment in my life.
Brilliant.
For some reason, a fictional elf has more respect in my house than I do. Fucking absurd situation. So that is it for another episode of Neuroshambles. Liz, thank you so much for coming on and discussing parental burnout, which I'm sure is going to resonate with a lot of people. So thanks for sharing that. Just take a moment to tell us a bit about your podcast, because it is great. I love it. I've listened to it, and it's great. So let's share it with people.
Thank you. Yeah, it's called The Untypical OT Talks. And at the moment, the series that I've got running is Are You the Perfect Parent? So it's basically a lineup of guests coming on just to talk about parenting and their experience of parenting. The whole purpose of it was to break down that kind of stigma around what is the perfect parent that we try to aspire to be, and to make parents feel a little less alone, and that it's okay to do things the untypical way.
Yes, nice. Yeah, and you've got some great guests on there. Some of whom we've had on our podcast.
Yeah, we have.
They've been pre-vetted and they're excellent.
And there is another guest that I know that could be coming on soon.
Yeah, I'm quite excited about coming onto a podcast and not having to edit it afterwards.
It's quite odd as well when you flip it round.
Yeah.
And you flip someone else asking the question.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, check out the Untypical OT Talks podcast. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Thanks.
Thank you also for listening, Neuroshamblers. I genuinely appreciate all the lovely comments on the socials and people who email me with topic suggestions. So please feel free to keep those coming in. If you want to email me, it's hello@neuroshambles.com. You can also follow us on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram or Threads. And all that remains for me to say now is have a nice life.